Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. B'Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, Ha'bayom tzom kippur yechatemun. And I've got everything. Today I'm just going to go through a whole bunch of books that I've read recently that I haven't spoken about yet, and tell you where I'm at, tell you what I've been reading. So first on this list I've got in front of me is the Agatha Christie's Murder in Mesopotamia. I think this is the 14th or 15th in my plan to read all of Hercule Poirot's stories in publication order. So we're still in the 30s, I think. This is originally 1936, and I put them out, I think, 2 a year at that point. So this is set in an archaeological dig, and Poirot, it's narrated by a third party. Poirot shows up about a third of the way in the book, and what I find amazing about things, this is very standard. I'm sure when I get through the whole series that this will not be one of the most memorable because everything about it is normal. What is amazing is how good Christie is at plotting. I got all the way to the end when Poirot gathers all the surviving members of this whole crew that have been out on this archaeological dig somewhere in Mesopotamia, and then we work out who did it and find out their motivation. And in a million years, despite putting up a whole bunch of suspects, everything was a red herring. It was the one person that I had never at any time considered a possible suspect. It's just good. It's just good plotting. What else I want to say? Oh yeah, one of the things that I like that Poirot uses this phrase, and then it becomes the title of a later chapter, where someone's been killed and he's worried that someone else is going to be killed, and it's also all three seen through the eyes of this third-party narrator who's been brought out to the dig to act as a nurse and a companion of the wife of the head archaeologist. And she says, "What do you mean? Why do you think someone else is going to get killed?" And he says, "Because murder is a habit." It's a great. I mean, I don't know. I haven't checked yet. I'm guessing there are about 1 trillion books who have stolen that as a title. Murder is a habit. It's fantastic. Christie is the greatest. This is super fun, even though probably insignificant in the annals of Poirot. Great. That's Murder in Mesopotamia by Agatha Christie. I'm still enjoying these. I'm still going to be picking them up. I've got 3 more that come after this, and then I'll keep looking for more. Okay, what else have I got? I've got here a Black Panther graphic novel. This is called The Long Shadow. The reason I picked this up, I'm not a huge fan of Black Panther, and I'm totally out of touch with where this is. This is a fairly recent one, but the reason I picked this up is because it was written by John Ridley. And now John Ridley famously won an Oscar for writing the screenplay to 12 Years a Slave. Before that, he had made very little splash as a writer of thrillers. I think his first book was a book called U-Turn, which was made into a movie, very low budget, unseen movie by, of all people, Oliver Stone. And I think it's starring Jennifer Lopez. It's forgotten. No one ever remembers the movie U-Turn. I'm not sure if I ever saw it, maybe on video back in the day. But I bought the book when at a time when I didn't really have access to all the books, so I must have found it in a second-hand bookshop. And then I read the next 2 books published by John Ridley because I'd read one. I don't think at that time I even realised that he was an author of colour. And I forgot about it. So I read 3 books by John Ridley, forgot about him altogether until this name showed up as the writer of the screenplay of 12 Years a Slave. And I'm not sure he has a great relationship with Steve McQueen, the director of 12 Years a Slave, not the 1950s white movie star Steve McQueen, but the 21st century movie director and artist Steve McQueen behind Black Axe and a whole bunch of movies. Anyway, I'm not sure they got on terribly well. They didn't seem to do any publicity together in the lead up to those Oscars, but Ridley won for best screenplay, and this is one of his projects afterwards. There's a few years after, and as I say, I don't really understand where this fits in. So we've got T'Challa is still the Black Panther here, but Shuri is also in the mix. Except democracy seems to have come to Wakanda. So T'Challa is the former king of Wakanda, but now there is a prime minister and an elected government, and Wakanda is going through a transition. Also, somewhere in this, T'Challa, who at some point had been married to Aurora Monroe, who is X-Men Storm, X-Woman. She's a mutant, called Storm, who you might remember, played by Halle Berry in the original set of X-Men movies from the early part of the 21st century. And they got married, and I think I've got a comic book of that, not written by John Ridley, and this is a new series, and somehow they're divorced in this. I guess, when I pick up graphic novels here and there, I'm not really sure what's going on and what the chronology is. I sort of go by author, and I'm kind of interested, but this plunked me into the middle of a whole story that I didn't really know what was going on, and it's 5 or 6 issues from Jeepers. 5 or 6 issues from this new series written by John Ridley. I'm not sure how long he did it for, and not really that excited about reading more. At some point, to try and find out what's going on, T'Challa takes a spaceship and flies to Mars, which is now where the X-Men are living. Just knocked my glass over my head. I didn't really follow what's going on. I'm just going to get my glass. I didn't really follow what was going on, but that's it. So that's Black Panther, The Long Shadow, written by John Ridley and drawn by a bunch of people I was not familiar with. Junie Barr's a co-writer. Juan Cabal, Ibrahim Mustafa, Stefano Landini, German Peralta. Anyway, next up was a novel that I was sent for free, so wasn't super excited to read. This happens to be a debut novel. It's called A Family Matter by Claire Lynch. It came out, this is an arc that I was sent, came out in May of this year, published by Chatto and Windus, or Vintage. I seem to be on Vintage's mailing list, so occasionally the same stuff. Super exciting. Anyway, I noticed it had big print and short chapters, and so I thought I would give it a go. I really like this. It's about so it's dual timeline, set in 2022 and also set in 1982, so 40 years earlier. And the story in 1982 is about a young mother of a little girl. The mother is Dawn. She's in a sort of fairly ordinary marriage with a husband who everyone calls Heron. I think his name is actually Henry, but everyone called him Heron because that's that's the name that he used as a young kid, because his brother couldn't say Henry or whatever. Anyway, and it's not a very terribly fulfilling marriage. Heron goes out to quite a boring job every day, and Dawn is at home with a 3-year-old child, and Dawn meets somebody when she's out and about one day and sort of falls in love and starts an illicit affair. And the person she falls in love with is another woman. Eventually she feels so bad about having this affair that she tells Heron, she tells her husband that she's been having an affair with another woman, just because she's burdened with guilt. And they have a big argument. She leaves the house. When she comes back the next morning, her husband has changed the locks and kicked her out. What follows is, what the heck is going on outside my apartment? Lots of people honking. I don't know if you can even hear that, but there's a lot of honking going on outside. What happens is a brief and nasty custody battle. This is all in 1982, where it is made very clear that a lesbian mother is a danger to the kid, morally and on every other level as well. There is later a court case where the woman is asked the most unimaginable questions about her sexual practices. Does she have sex in front of the child? I think this is a direct quote. What appliances do you use when you have sex? Just humiliation, and eventually, whatever. At the same time, there is a dual timeline with 2022, where the 3-year-old child is now an adult, married and with children, who only has ever known her father and believes that her mother ran out on her when she was a baby, because that's the story she's been told. And it's just quite a sad story, not beautifully written without being overly manipulative, although there are aspects of it which are a little disingenuous. But I just thought nicely written. There's some great touches of language. Forget the story. So my any problems I have with it are in the plotting and in the design of the story, but the writing itself is gorgeous. So there's an example at the beginning where Dawn is out and she meets her lover at a jumble sale. Having not met her before, this is where they encounter each other for the first time. And there's a description. This is English, by the way, British book. And there's a description of going to a jumble sale in the early 80s where I think you paid 5p 5 or 10p to enter, and clothes are like 50p, or if it's fancy it's a pound, and people are rummaging through looking at labels hoping to find St. Michael, described here as the patron saint of sturdy seams. Now, anyone who knows what St. Michael on the label represents, that was the brand of Marks and Spencer, which certainly in the 80s was known as a solid, reliable brand. Everybody my age bought their underwear only in Marks and Spencer. Only maybe 10 years later, in the 90s, did people even begin to consider buying their underwear in a place that wasn't Marks and Spencer, because Marks and Spencer was known for being the most reliable, and also sold everything else. Bought shirts for school, and my first suit, and everything was from Marks and Spencer, and St. Michael was the local. So the people looking in a second-hand jumble sale looking for clothes, St. Michael, the patron saint of sturdy seams. It was reliable. If you've got to pick it up second-hand, if you were needed to purchase your clothes, not. It's just a tiny little touch, and I felt I was in safe hands with the writing. In terms of the story itself, it does drift into the polemic, but it's not unjustified. The treatment of lesbian mothers by the courts in the 1980s is horrific. Now, I was around in 1982, but I was a young teenager. But the fact that I was alive and that this would be considered so horrific, and the way that the lawyers and the judges were allowed to talk and dismiss with no scientific background, with no psychological background, just make statements about lesbians being unfit mothers. It's all pretty horrific. You find out in the acknowledgements at the end of the book that although this is a fictional story, that the quotes from the court case are taken from real transcripts of actual court cases that took place in the 80s. I like this. I thought the writing was great. The jumping back and forth between 1982 and you find and Dawn's story, and then 2022 and her daughter Maggie's story and her relationship with her father, her relationship with her own husband and her kids, and the family that she's built around her, having grown up all her life without a mother, and then the denouement and the resolution towards the end. I thought it was perfectly marvelous and very, very quick reading. So this is like 200 pages odd, but big thick print and very short chapters and big spaces between them, and really a quick read. A first novel, let's say, not perfect, but nothing wrong with the writing. I would definitely look out for anything else that Claire Lynch, another novel that Claire Lynch has, because I think this is interesting. That was A Family Matter by Claire Lynch. After that, I was going into Rosh Hashanah. So we just had the Jewish New Year last week. We have coming up the end of this week, Yom Kippur, and then after that we have another festival, Sukkot, where we build a little hut and eat all our meals in a tabernacle outside in the front garden of our apartment building, alongside everyone else's. Anyway, so I had 2 days of Rosh Hashanah where I was in synagogue early in the morning and sat there through quite a lot of prayers. And I don't mind. I'm kind of over praying. I don't mind it. It's a big community thing. My wife is sitting in the ladies section, and we go to a specific service which is called the No Frills. Some other services in the same day might take 4, 5, 6 hours because there's a lot of prayers and a lot of things going on. And the one we go to is No Frills, where they don't mess around. They do a little bit less singing. I still find it meaningful, but even that is a bit much for me, so I take a book with me. And I sit there and I do a bit of prayers, and they blow the shofar, and I stand up and I listen to that, and I do all the important prayers, but I do a lot of reading. And the book I chose, I read it, I knew I was going to have 2 days of this, and the book I chose to take with me to synagogue and then read in the rest of those days was The Lost by Daniel Mendelsohn. This is the third book by Daniel Mendelsohn that I've read. The first one's called Three Rings, and then I went back and read a book of his called The Odyssey, and then this is The Lost, which I think chronologically he wrote before either of those books. And this is about his search for some family. So he grew up his whole life in New York, listening to stories of his grandfather, who spoke about this village back in Poland where his father had come from, and remembered life back in the old village, and everyone got out except one of the brothers. One of the brothers, so they all left in the 20s. Some came to America, one went to Israel, and one of the families, Tham, is known in Yiddish Shmuel, which is Samuel, but in Hebrew you'd say Shmuel. In Yiddish they say Shmuel. Is left behind with his wife Esther and his 4 daughters, and all we know in today is that none of them survived the Second World War. Clearly, they were all murdered by the Nazis as part of the almost utter annihilation of Polish Jews. I think over 90% of Polish Jews were killed. And from the tiny little village that these people were in, that Daniel Mendelssohn knows not enough about, and decides he wants to find out more, not just how they died, but also how they lived. There are stories, and the family has stories, and some of these stories sort of overlap, some of them contradict each other, and he just sets out over a period of years. He travels back to the village, which I'm going to mangle the name of because it's in Russian, but I think he calls it Bolachov, but then someone else tells me it's called Bolechov, and then someone says Bulachov, and now in Polish it's known as something else. But he goes back and finds people who had lived in this Polish village. He finds them all over the world. So he goes back to the village itself. Then he finds people. He messages and is on genealogy boards, saying these, trying to trace this family as anyone else from this village. He flies to Sydney, Australia, and meets 2 elderly men. And he's doing all this in the early 2000s, 2001, I think he starts, till about 2003, and the book is published in 2004, 2005. So if you say 2000 is 55 years after the end of the Second World War, and so 65 years since some of these people were in this village, or maybe later. Some of them left in the late 30s, some of them got out after that, some of them survived the first purges and the first death marches, or the first actions as they were called, where they round up 1,000 Jews and killed them. So he meets people who survived, got out, and managed to escape and build lives, and 55 years later are living in Sydney as men in their 70s, sometimes older. He meets people who are older. What this is he's tracking down the last few people with actual memories of his uncle and the family and the cousins who were killed, to try and find out what happened. It's a chunky book. It is unrelenting. It is goes into detail when something happens. So that first action in the village where 1,000 Jews were rounded up, brought into the sort of town hall, or the village cultural center, which was a place where everyone before the war had gone to watch movies on a Saturday night. 1,000 Jews are taken in there, and in great detail he talks about how they were stripped naked, how the rabbis had their eyes put out, how they were forced to go with naked girls, how the girls were raped, how the families were shot and dismembered. And I apologize, perhaps I should have put a spoiler warning up before I said all this. There are no spoiler warnings in this book. He talks about the truthfulness, or the importance of truthfulness in history, and so he searches out these terrible, gruesome, macabre details with the same diligence that he finds kindnesses, people who were saved by Ukrainians or Poles, or it's just unflinching, the book. He also, in the process of this, he does a lot of these travels with one of his brothers in particular, but he travels also with the rest of his siblings, and it's also about a discovery of his relationship with his family. It's an incredible work. I'm not sure I can recommend it to anyone. I don't read a lot of Holocaust literature. I thought if I was going to be reading in synagogue over Rosh Hashanah, that it might be appropriate to read something with some heft to it. And this was very well received when it came out, and rightly so. I think it won National Book Critics Circle Award, some book Circle Critics. I don't know what that is. On the back, we got quotes by Michael Chabon, Joyce Carol Oates, Jonathan Safran Foer, who was big at the time as a novelist. The Lost by Daniel Mendelsohn. I can't say Mendelsohn. Daniel Mendelsohn. Tough read, but spectacular work of history. After that, something a little lighter. I read The Last Place You Look by Kristen Lepionka, which I picked up as a sort of palate cleanser. I like PI novels, I like detective stories, and somehow I must have had the idea that this was going to be a good one. And as I saw it sitting on the shelf, I thought, oh, have I just picked up another sort of The Girl on the Train? A book by a woman written for women. I don't know. I'm trying to stop my face painting this thing. I had pigeonholed it, or potentially pigeonholed it, as a book that was going to be a bit of a fluff, and I might find it a little frustrating. Not the case at all. This is good PI writing. This is good writing. This is a good detective. Our detective here, or our private investigator, is Kristen. No, sorry, is Roxanne. That's Kristen is the author. Roxanne Weary. At the start of the novel, she is recovering from the death of her father, who was a police officer. Within the last year, he was shot in the line of duty, and she's sort of drifted into the bottle, and her life has fallen apart. And a case lands in her lap, and she takes it on. This has got all the best of PI tropes, the best set of investigation, that the most sort of dogged PI work with a shitty little car and a problem with alcohol and a problem with all her relationships. I guess something unusual in this is that some of her relationships are with men and some of her relationships with women. I read Julian Barnes's Duffy books, which he wrote under a pseudonym, also figure a bisexual PI. So it wasn't my first encounter with such an idea, but it's very much part of Roxanne, the detective's identity and who she is, and is about, I guess, a metaphor for her spreading herself thin. I don't want to say confusion, because it's not about confusion. She's got confused sexuality. It's not that. She's clearly and happily attracted to one woman particularly in her life, but other women also, and her late father's ex-partner, who was younger than him and is very protective of her, and they have a sort of on-off relationship. It's all very told with a lot of nuance, a lot of sensitivity. It's smart, it's clever. I didn't solve it. The ending and the solution, a little bit bonkers, but good writing enough. I think there are 3 more Roxanne Weary novels, and I think I'm giving them a try, because Kristen Lepionka is the real deal, and she is writing in the spirit of other proper noir PIs. So you've got Spencer series by Robbie Parker. I read 40 of those. He is, of course, entirely based on Chandler's writing, and obsessed with that. It's good lineage. This is solid stuff. I recommend this. The Last Place You Look, if you're looking for a new PI series, good noir writing, this was more than I could have hoped for. After that, I read this. This is The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott, which is this is a book. This is a bigger book. This is a graphic novel about a character called Billy Scott, who is an artist, has a fair amount of social anxiety, and keeps herself locked in her bedroom making art, and discovers that she's going blind, and she's got 2 weeks left to live. Oh, at the same time that she is told she is being awarded an exhibition in London, at a sort of very fancy and very prestigious place. So she has 2 weeks to submit 10 paintings at the time, and the doctor has told her she'll be blind in 2 weeks, and starts off on this journey, and decides that she's got £100 in her pocket, also English, by the way, and sets off to try and find subjects for her art. And from there on, I don't think there's anything terribly surprising, but it's moving and it's kind of wonderful. And at the end of the book, we get the montage of the 10 paintings that she's made in time to get them to the exhibition, as she loses her sight. Um, uh, uh, yeah, it's a bit rough and ready, and the art is great. I think the art of those 10 portraits, which we get clearly at the end, you knew they were coming. I don't think they're terribly groundbreaking or special, but I think it's more about finding your humanity and being a person rather than being the world's greatest artist. And I kind of love this. This is by Zoe Thorogood, I should have said, written and drawn by Zoe Thorogood. I think this was her first work. I think she's gone on to do other standalone graphic novels, and also I think done some comic work as well. I thought it was okay. I mean, I must have read about it enough to seek it out, and I kind of enjoyed it, even though I figured I knew where it was going. I read that Friday night in an hour. After that, I read this, Ingrained, by Callum Robinson. And this is a memoir of a master craftsman, a woodworker. And I picked this up because it was on the 2024 New York Times Books of the Year. And I got this in paperback, in UK edition. It's published by Penguin. And it's kind of fantastic. Also, beautiful writing. This is a guy whose father made his living by making things out of wood. And it's about his reconciling his relationship with his father. Originally, he drops out of school, or he leaves school with no qualifications, doesn't go to university, tries to find his way in the world, eventually comes back and sort of and learns at his father's in his father's workshop, and then his father is seems to be sort of amazing to you. Just, you know, you've got a problem, you don't always have to turn to me with the problem. You've got to try and solve it yourself, because a lot of what they do, we understand a lot of what's happening in woodworking, whether it's making something artistic or making something practical, a piece of furniture. It's about solving problems. We also get a lot of the different qualities of wood. He's in a timber yard and deciding whether he wants oak or sycamore or elm, and discussing the different qualities of each of these woods, and what they need, and what happens when wood is wet, over if it's dry or if it's too dry, and can you use it, bend it to your will, and going with the grain. A lot of really good nature writing about the trees and the forest and the way they sustain us. A lot of really good writing about what it means to be artistic and to have an idea, and put yourself into what it is you're doing, and a lot of also very practical stuff about how to make a bloody living out of this. He has a workshop. The impetus at the start of the story is there's a big project. He has 3 people working for him. He works with his wife. She's also involved in the business, and she's a designer. And at the very beginning, they lose a project that was supposed to pay them for the next 6 months, was going to be a massive project for a major commercial client, because he does very, very high end, very beautiful work, which I've then gone to look at his website and seen examples of it. This is not somebody who's just replacing the door on your pantry. This is somebody who's designing very high end, very expensive luxury goods out of wood. And he loses this project, and the money's running out. He won't be able to pay everybody, and they have to try and find a solution. And it's about the business as much as anything. So a key text for all these kind of memoirs is Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, which, if you haven't read it, read that, because it's unbelievable. I read it 25 years ago. It's spectacular. Go out and read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. I think so. This is trying to be that, and there's a quote from Andy Bourdain somewhere along the thing, and some of the stories, are funny about the quirky people he has working for him, the things that happen when you try and sell something. Does it go through? Doesn't go through? The disappointments, the joys, the highs. It's all in here. I think a closer comparison would be Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bythel, Bythel, about running this secondhand bookshop in Scotland, which I read. It's a fun read, and about the quirky people that come in, the people that work for him, and the thing. I think it's closer to that probably than Kitchen Confidential. Also, there's a hint here of Lab Girl by Hope Yaren, which is also amazing. All these books are amazing, actually. Kitchen Confidential is top tier, but The Diary of a Bookseller is amazing if you like books. Seek that out. Lab Girl is, again, a world I know nothing about. Making a career in science and in research laboratories. This is something I know nothing about, although my dad would have loved this. Loved the discussion of woods and woodworking. So I kind of loved it as well. It's great. It's not Kitchen Confidential, but that should not be anything that puts you off. I have no particular interest in woodworking. I'm about as cat-handed as possible to imagine. But Ingrained The Making of a Craftsman by Callum Robinson is kind of marvelous. And that's it. Those are all the books. So I've started now. I've got Yom Kippur coming up, so I'm going to read this and then I will take this. Yom Kippur, I will be in synagogue most of the day. So starting early, we'll have a break in the afternoon and then go back in the afternoon through the evening. It's a 25-hour fast. And I have started. I will be taking with me Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now, because I figured this is a big chunky book, and if I have hours of sitting in synagogue in between prayers, I can probably get a couple of hundred pages in, which will give me a good lead into the weekend. And that's where I'm at. Hope you're all keeping well. God bless. Happy New Year. Shana Tova to anyone. Gemar Chatima Tova. Well over the fast for anyone who's fasting. We should all have a happy and sweet New Year and be sealed in the book of life. God bless. Bye.